hell, and who's in it today on Made for Glory. There's a great scene in the beginning of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn where Huck is talking to the lady who has adopted him, the widow Douglas, and they're talking about being good so he can go to heaven. And she keeps telling him you need to be good and follow these rules so you can go to heaven. He's asking about heaven and, why would I want to go there? She says, heaven is wonderful. All you do is sit on a cloud and play a harp all day long. And Huck's kind of like, oh, that sounds terrible. And he says, well, do you think my friend Tom Sawyer is going to be there? And she says, like, no, Tom Sawyer is definitely not going to go to heaven. He's going to go to hell. So he's like, well, I think I'd rather go there. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, who is in hell and why are they sent there? And how does that affect our lives today? Now, the response to that is the reality of heaven is much more than just playing a harp on a cloud. That heaven is the fulfillment of all desire, all the desires of our hearts fulfilled in God, who is the source of love and light, and eternal union with God and all of the blessed in heaven. When we talk about hell, hell is the realization that God takes our freedom seriously. So rather than thinking about God as one who's looking for an excuse to send you to hell, that God gives us commandments, God gives us invitations of how we are called to live our lives, to turn from sin, which ultimately hurts us, hurts our relationship with ourselves, with God, and with others, to turn away from sin and turn towards life. But when we don't do that, God actually takes your decision and my decision, takes our freedom seriously. So God is not going to force anyone into heaven. So when we talk about the reality of hell, we're saying that fundamentally that God has created us with free will and he actually respects that free will. So that if we choose loneliness, if we choose bitterness, if we choose to live in hatred of ourselves, hatred of God, hatred of one another, then God's not going to force us to forsake that. That's our invitation. God invites us to turn away from that. And that's really what Jesus offers to us, is a new way of living. His salvation that's offered to us is to set us free from what we call sin that doesn't free us, but ultimately that puts us in chains, that keeps us in bondage, because God wants us to live forever with him in heaven. So hell is a reality. It's a reality of our faith. It's, in a sense, the necessary consequence of freedom. And so God invites us to live our lives in a way that turns from our own prisons of sometimes self-imposed prisons of sin and open ourselves up to the grace, to the new life that he offers for us. So we need to pray for every single person who's alive today, all those who maybe are living a life that's leading towards hell, leading towards that place of separation, that place of loss, that place of pain, and that we need to be a light to them to help them to recognize that God has more for them, because God has more for each and every one of us. No matter what we've done in our past, that God wants to do something beautiful for us, because you and I were made for glory.